Patricia, O'Connor, and Frida Darcy here today on the bonsai balcony. Let's repot a little Ponderosa Pine. I have here a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful unglazed pot made by Elizabeth Crutenden, and I see these textures remind me so much of her pots, the way they do this. They remind me so much of canyon trees. I love this. I think of Ponderosa, it just naturally I was like, this needs the right Ponderosa. This pot does need the right Ponderosa. That's what I saw the minute I looked at it. You know what else? And I even told this to Elizabeth. The way she carves these, it sort of reminds me of the Rosetta Stone. You know, there's a little subliminal click that says ancient and mysterious, right? And the tree I've selected to pair up is this Ponderosa right here. This little guy right here. We folded this about the middle of last year. Maybe at the like early fall. Let's say that. We folded this early fall. It's in this little plastic pot, and I have some substrate standing by. It's Boon Mix. It's a nice size particle for this size tree. It looks very much like what it was potted in last time, so that might prove to be consistent there. But that's what we're gonna do today. I've got all my other tools I have standing by, or I have a couple of pair of tweezers. I have my stainless steel poker. I feel slightly paranoid to say I don't have one of my weenie skewers. I like to always have a weenie skewer standing by. That's kind of like Linus's blanket, I suppose. I've got my little scoop, which is helpful. I have a pair of hooked needle nose pliers. I have a pair of stainless scissors in case I have to do anything in dirt. I have some regular scissors in case I have to do something that doesn't involve dirt. I can use those. And I have some dog treats for an absent co-star. We'll just keep those standing by. Today it's a spring day. I set this shot up. It was very blue and rather hot. I was going to say that it was 11 billion degrees. That's not even 11 billion degrees, I tell you. But it's since then we've gotten a little bit overcast and it's cooled down rather nice. I would bet we are, well, I can just look. We're in the 60s. We're in the mid 60s. There's not a lot of wind. While Frida and I were out earlier, I noticed that the pines on the property here that the trees on the property are all also making candles. So it's not something that it's candle time. It's candle time for all of them. I guess that means that I've kind of had, maybe, have I been that distracted? Have I been that distracted that these guys started making making candles, and I needed to have them. For me to cut those, I would have to have the substrate will need to have been up for quite some time already. We just did a show last week where I said make sure you have all your substrate down, and that's still probably good advice for most of the country. Uh, you know, last night on my live broadcast, some people were going, "Yeah, it's Christmas here," meaning that they were getting snow and stuff. Um, whereas here, everything's budding out quite a bit. Uh, I'm happy. I'm happy to say, and I've always been what I call kind of a sun baby. So you know, if there's some hell to pay for this later, I don't, I don't see it. I think this is great, having this kind of weather. I love warm weather. I do. I love spring and summer and fall. I love all the seasons. I always get a little bit of winter depression. I think depression's probably a hard word. I can always just kind of feel it, but I can also feel it in the people around me too. So to my way of thinking, it's something that either some people are more aware of than others, but probably everybody experiences the change of seasons. I know in other countries that the change of seasons is recognized as something that you can take a day off over. Here in the States, if you said, "Yeah, I'm not feeling it. I think the fall weather has kicked in, or I'm not getting enough light or something. I feel really bummed out this week," they would look at you like you were, that would not be considered really acceptable, which is kind of a shame, I think. I think anyway. We should be, other countries see that as the change of seasons, your body is going to adapt a little bit like everything else does. Anyway, just the opposite. Just the opposite happens this time of year. The term "spring in your step" seems to make sense, more sense more so. I am fixing this guy up with a little screen and copper wire. Can you do this? Yeah. Heck yeah. Heck yeah, I can do that. Just did it. Knowing that I was going to do this, I probably should have had some wire cutters, or yeah, I should have had some wire cutters standing by. I didn't. Pat, you did not. Think of everything. I have really been enjoying this weather, and everything on the property that makes blooms is making some kind of blooms right now. It's just very exciting if you're into that kind of thing. And I am, that's what bonsai does to people. I would say you can't be. I don't see how somebody can be into bonsai and not be aware of certain things. I know right after I started back into bonsai, all of a sudden on my little dog walks, I started noticing the trunks of trees everywhere. And last night I was listening to a program. I was listening to a podcast, and it had gone unnoticed before. It was done by another. It was done by a bonsai nursery in Louisiana who does these podcasts, and they also do some really good. They also do some really good videos, and they're also all about a cypress. But last night's podcast was an interview with a guy named a person who's known for their cypress. They're known for bonsai, but they're especially known for cypress, and their name's Guy Guidry. And whenever I started growing these three things, I watched everything I could get my hands on in the way of bonsai videos dealing with bald cypress or swamp cypress, whichever you prefer. I had somebody the other day mention, I had said on a video that I had always thought that swamp was a derogatory term because you usually hear about people wanting to fill in swamps or drain the swamp, or, nobody ever said that's the most beautiful swamp I ever, So, and I was kind of like saying, so I prefer, and then somebody pointed out and go, I always thought that about the word bald. And I was like, oh, wow, never once did that cross my mind. I could see where that would be a cringe-worthy word in some circles or some instances. So everything I could possibly watch about bald cypress or swamp cypress or red cypress, American cypress, same tree in China, I think, so I don't know that fits either. Everything I could possibly watch on it, and to that end, I heard mention, and I saw a picture or two. There were some growers of bald cypress who would go into the swamps in Louisiana and collect trees, and I would follow some of them and watch how they did things and kind of ponder how they did things. Jumping the gun, Pat. Patricia. And this person, Guy Guidry's name would come up, and it was always in past tense. And I saw this one cypress tree. It had buttresses at the base that was this wide. And then last night in the podcast, not only is this guy still around, he kind of took off for a minute. It sounds like to me. I don't think I'm getting the story wrong to say that our guy left bonsai for a minute, and I think what it is, because he had achieved a lot and was in a New Orleans tourist mecca. I saw pictures of his store, not by watching the video, but by seeing that he had a link to, and it showed a store that had been going since 2015. And I wasn't thinking bonsai when I was in New Orleans. I so should have been, but I kind of had my hands full. Getting my head handed to me, frankly. So yeah, that would have been a great time. Bonsai might have almost been a saving grace then. Should have been watching, I guess. We're gonna give ourselves plenty of wire. All right. So this person, Guy Guidry, their name had come up a couple of times, but it was always past tense, and I never heard. I remember at one point, maybe I missed the part where he's around here somewhere. He's just not active. he's associated with a bald cypress that's a known tree. People have kind of lent stories as to what has come of this tree, but it was the tree I was mentioning earlier. It had this huge buttress, and the tree has a name, and the name was Twister. Twister. N-E-M, it's a twister. Uh, so with this store and this shop and everything, but he was talking about bonsai and how when he got into bonsai, it changed how he looked at everything. That's where I was going with this. Also, I've also got Guy Guidry on the brain, having just answered the question to myself in that one podcast, what became of Guy Guidry. He even said at some point, he goes, I would rather make trees than have trees, because he just really enjoys the creative process. But at some point, it sounds like maybe he also burned out. So there's nothing that says, get your nose down there, get your head down there, and just keep rubbing your nose in it, like you decided you were going to do bonsai. Damn it, you keep doing bonsai. No, one of the person had made a life for themselves and a life of their choosing, and one that they had liked, and when it became something else to them, they backed away from it. But they also said they're coming back, that they've were gone long enough to renew that they found their joy again. But the part where once you start doing bonsai, you don't see other trees the same way. You don't see other plants the same way. You don't see, and he took it to a broader extent and was saying, I don't want to dump that in there. He was saying how you don't, you don't see nature, you can no longer ignore nature, is what's the point. It becomes the unavoidable beautiful truth. You often hear about the unavoidable ugly truth. Man, the roots on this thing look really good. Also, wish I would have done this before I watered it, but that's okay. Just do this a little bit. A little less. They were just starting to see those white roots. That says, what are you doing here, Pat? I'm loosening this I hope I'm all in, but that's what I'm doing here. I'm loosening all this up. Okay. Now, I heard the music stop that I had going, and then I heard it restart. That means nothing more than the music stopped and restarted, although it might mean I lost Wi-Fi for a second. The last time that happened, I stopped filming, and I continued not without knowing, and then discovered after about 20 minutes that I wasn't shooting. The difference in that one was I got away with it because I wasn't in the middle of unpotting something. So if that's happened this time, kind of screwed. Uno momento. Oh yeah, that would have been cool. Nope, we're running. Okay, I just had to make sure. That made me paranoid when I thought about it. I went, you heard the music stop for a minute, and the last time that happened, you also stopped shooting. So, yeah, but it didn't kill us. I was able to start over I was able to start over on that one. Failure to grab my weenie skewers means that I'm doing with my weenie skewers what I would typically do I'm doing now with my stainless steel chopstick what I would normally be doing with my little wooden skewers. I think this is, it's easier to tear up roots with this. That's kind of why I tend to go with my really lightweight. I don't want the momentum. Trying to loosen this up a little. This is the original plug, and it's good that it has this. I mean, as far as also repotting pines and stuff, I'm all about wanting to keep a certain amount of the root base intact, right? And this would be an especially good time to leave a little more of that. So, having said that, yeah, that's the part where you go, but, Patricia, yeah, but I'm about to go into a bonsai pot. And the top of this and the sides of this still strongly resemble the plug, the cube, you know, like an ice cube resembles the ice tray. This still resembles whatever popsicle hole it was sitting in whenever it rooted. It's too square looking. At some point, I would have a mass of hard roots that could be a cool feature to the tree. If only they weren't making a perfect cube shape. So I have to break that up. This is a good time to do that. Having not already done that, this is a good time to get on that before we, oh, look at those roots. It's going to be so gnarly. I'm going to love that. And do this. And, all right. That is why that's why I have stainless scissors for doing stuff like this. Do not, or I will not, do something like that with my black steel scissors. Also, kind of a bright side to not having, I mean, if there was an accidental bright side, the accidental bright side to not having a real backyard is I can't get all excited, bring something in, start messing with it in the house, and totally forget my tools outside. It's not something that really happens in my world. Okay, that was a little effed up, but we can work around that. Okay, let's do this. Shooting for the moon here. Okay. What's this? Made a mistake. Made more than one mistake. I need a tool I need a tool. I'll be right back. It's just behind camera, so I won't be gone long. Okay. Stay. How are we framed up? Framed up like we're framed up like a bad suspect. Asleep. Good life. Yeah. Nip X. You can cut limbs, you can cut branches, you can cut wire, you can cut limbs that are wired and not worry because they're just tiny little badass bolt cutters. I like that. Also, I had a little issue here. Redo. When I tried to poke that piece of wire that I just cut off, which was going to be a third piece of wire because these two are my tie down wires. When I tried to poke that through this guy, I ran that guy through the hole, lifting it up, getting a lot of substrate underneath it. So I then took that substrate and dumped it back in my original thing, and now we're gonna go back. I mean, it only took me a minute to fix that right then. This is Boon Mix. I have some on order, making its way here as we speak. Whenever I do shows and I have a little bit left over, I pour it in my cement mixer. Whenever I pot up something and it doesn't like being repotted and tells me by going on to the netherland, to the netherworld, that unused up soil also will go in the cement mixer. Whenever I have times like now where I'm waiting on more substrate, that makes that a perfect time to go to my cement mixer and scoop up more Boon Mix. I keep it separate, and in other words, this was always in a pie tin because I knew that if I needed stuff with perlite in it, I could have everything in the bottom of the cement mixer. That's perfect for seedlings and stuff like that. I go through it and I pick out the needles, I pick out the little pieces of root, the occasional finger, you know, anything that's in there. I'll pull all of that out, and then that makes it, that means that I'm not wasting all of that stuff and I don't have to worry about trying to pour it back in the bag. And I have it there for when and I have a little backup for whenever I'm caught a little unaware. I want this to rise up out of the pot like this. I want this, oh, that'll be dramatic. Let's try some of that. So, that's a little thing. Easy, Pat. cut off some of the excess here so I'm not slinging around copper with sharp ends to tear up these needles while I put the Twisted Death on this guy. Beautiful day for this. Put another wrap in it before you try it. Okay. Quite warm. I hope where you are that you're liking what the weather is doing and that it suits your trees and that it suits your frame of mind. A little hard. I should have had bigger pliers for that. You kids get in there. I like that. Yes. And we have just the right kind of exposed roots here. I believe to get away with that just fine. Okay, start filling in on the sides. I think this is going to be a little star, our little Ponderosa star unto itself. That pot is going to make for a nice touch. About this Ponderosa. This is one of 10 that I ordered from Oregon or Washington. I can't remember now. And I also don't remember at the time whether or not, I remember having a difficult time trying to locate some Succulorum, and I might have ultimately decided to experiment. I don't remember. Here's what. If I'd have done that, that might have actually not been a bad idea, because there are other species, subspecies of Ponderosa. As I mentioned earlier, the Succulorum is the one that you hear, I think, people discussing most. And the way you're supposed to know whether or not it's a Succulorum It's by where it came from, where you harvested when it came from the wild. So, so. My wondering why, and if you watch the show, I've been questioning. I've been told that my old Ponderosa scopulorums will not thrive here. That's what I have been told. To some extent, I've seen that to be true. In my own thinking, probably a little hard-headed about that because one, I wanted one. Um, yeah. And two, I could point to other trees. I mean, the worst ism is whataboutism. But I would go, what about all those ponderosas over there at that dang botanical garden 6 miles from here? Uh, they may not have been scopulorum. That might be the breaker. That species is a very, very high elevation, very short growing season, very, very intense, very intense growing conditions. Short summer that's really, really hot. Brutal winter with a lot of snow. And that is an area and a place in the world where these little trees have learned to live in such a way that the competition can't push them out. I say it that way because it's been put to me that south-facing, arid, no water, high wind, high elevation, high temperatures are what this tree prefers. No. Who would prefer that? Nobody would prefer that. But if you get a place where all the other trees would go, I can't hang there, I'll die. Then there's something that can hang out there and say, well, I am here, king of the mountain, all by myself. And that's a very good thing for me. That's why they are there. So even though they can survive on very little water, they would appreciate a little more. Their root system is very, very woody. They do take less water than pines, and than Japanese black pines. The roots have a vascular system that will supply other species of pines. The way they tell me this works is if you want to graft something onto something else, go with something that has a fine vascular tissue and graft that onto something that has a coarse vascular tissue. And the way to think of that is the root system, and this is what I was told to think of. So those of you who subscribe to Bonsai Mirai will actually recognize the terminology. The root system on a Ponderosa is like a fire plug. And the needles of a Japanese black pine are like a water hose. They're thinner, they transmit a lot of water, the vascular membrane is thin enough that water passes into air and oxygen more readily. So they turn their wet soil and vape it off in this motion, goes from the roots to the needles and just kind of keeps a black pine going. Um, Ponderosas, to deal with all those extremes I said, they'll have a couple of tricks up their sleeve. The roots that are around their base, they can turn those off. They can just clamp them shut, and they maybe have some taproot that's been kind of squirreling away a little energy in between a crack and a rock. They will tap that taproot until it is depleted, and then they will let it die, and then they will start trying to make another one somewhere else. And when collected, you can find all of these ex taproots where over the years it's been having to play this game against that game to keep alive and keep its game going. So what it will do is its needles can also close off. They're coarse. They can close off to where uh, they're not um, respirating. They're not passing water through them through their vasculars, because they've just closed up all they're all about holding on to what they have. That's why their needles look the way they do. They're also a little rougher, to the touch. They don't feel as waxy. They're coarse. So when you change this foliage, if you were to change this foliage with something that's fine, the fine stuff will love it. It's going like, wow, what an abundance of resources we have. And then but the flip side of that for the Ponderosa is that makes for a very, very, very slow growing tree. You can find them on the mountains really small because they've got that tiny growing season and they grow so slow anyway. You can find a mame. I mean, you can find a show hen Ponderosa, 25 years old, show hen, dig it up, put it in a pot, boom, bark on the trunk, bark on the branches, lichens all over it because it's been on the side of a mountain for a bazillion years. They move, their metabolism moves so slowly, but if you graft that with Japanese black pine, all of a sudden those Japanese black pine needles will not be wanting for anything because they were used to a faucet in the backyard supplying the water hose, and now all of a sudden they've been hooked up to a fire plug, and it doesn't blow them out. They're just like, wow, we're rich. We have everything we could ever want. So in that way, that makes for a way to get around whatever subspecies this is. If this is a Ponderosa subspecies that would die here, I can graft this with Japanese black pine, or I can throw this in the top shelf of the freezer for a few hours while I'm asleep, and do that for a couple of nights until I have accumulated a little bit of winter hardiness. The rumor has it, and the jury is still out on that, but the rumor has it that somewhere around 36 hours of below freezing will prepare succulorum for the summer. Otherwise, it will run itself into the ground and die in 2 or 3 years. I was told that. I played whataboutism, looking at the bonsai garden in Oakland, less than 12 miles from here, looking at the ones in the Oakland Hills, listening to members of my club say, I have them and they're doing fine. I played whataboutism, and so far, out of the 4 old ones that I have, I lost 2. So before I decided, this is not a game, you're not going to win this. So at that point, I began to take measures. That's why one of the trees that lives had been living where I'm sitting now on this table is now in Auburn, California, getting winterized, and it just had some we grafted, or I didn't. Peter T and his crew grafted some Japanese black pine to that. So when it comes back home on the 17th, which is next Sunday, when it comes back home, it'll go back there with that little 17-year from seed is sitting there going, wow, don't we have it good all of a sudden? Um, so yeah, and look at that. That's what we did today. I think that's going to be awesome. It's raised up this little plug. I broke this little plug down now to where it no longer looks like a plug. It looks like a wearing down outcropping of rock. We got this guy going in some boom mix, which is akadama, lava, and pumice. Crushed brick, maybe? Pumice. And they love that. They love the stuff that you know, if I were to put this in akadama, I would have lost this faster than I was losing the pines because I can't not water that much. I can't gauge how dry something has to be when it needs to be that dry. It's hard for me to figure out how long it's been that dry because you just let it go all the way dry but have to know, you know, or you're gonna rot the roots. So I can't do that. What you want with one of these guys is you want something that's rocky, more substratey, that like a lava rock. It's gonna hold a little bit of water but not a lot, right? You want the water to run all the way through there, pull the air in behind it, and let the roots find the little bitty holes in the rocks and stuff that have a little bit of moisture. But we want most of it to pour through and vacate the pot. We don't want that sitting around in pure clay or something, or sand or something that's looming. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I may do another repot today. Otherwise, this is probably gonna be it for us. We did a program last night on wisterias on Saturday Night Live Bonsai at Frida's place, and it was another. I am really enjoying doing those live shows, and we will continue to do so. I've got all the materials in place to do the air layer for this maple behind us, for this trident maple, and I am really looking forward to doing that. The only thing we have that we don't, the only thing that we don't have that I think we need is foliage. This is spring is, I believe, a great time to air layer this tree. Great time to do that. But I want to do it a little later in spring when it has more foliage pulling resources through the trees. I want a lot of stuff to be moving, a lot of stuff while we have this air layer while we have this air layer in place. But to that end, I have accumulated my a new bag of sphagnum peat moss. I've accumulated I already had shrink wrap. I already have all the other things that I already have. I have a grafting knife for when I want to start grafting ponderosas, but I also have something kind of shaped like a barlow with a little bit of a hooped blade. My grafting knife for the ponderosas and stuff is the Japanese black steel, no BS, super sharp piece of flat metal that was hardened and cut into a blade, and you just kind of hold the steel and use that. No frills, exactly what you need. But the other one is looked more like a pocket knife, except you can tell that it was probably more for pear grafting or something. Anyway, I look forward to doing that. We are going to do that probably on we'll probably do that on one of our Saturday Night Live shows, but it'll need to be mid-April. Somewhere around April 20th or something like that, unless this flushes out faster, more than I think it's going to. But when that happens, we're going to air layer. We're going to do an air layer on this trident maple and make a really low 3-trunk tree out of it. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I appreciate you. Frida appreciates you if she's not here to tell you in her dog person. And thank you so much for watching. Pat, you're covered in rocks and dog hair.